Awesome, guys. Welcome to another Soulpepper webinar. Today, we're going to focus on website strategies for law firms, attracting quality leads with an effective website. I'll do a quick intro for those of you who've been to my previous webinars. Quick intro about me. Over 15 years of experience in the digital marketing industry. I specialize in SEO, SEM, and also development and design. Some personal information about me: I am a mixed martial artist. I've competed over the years and a big fan of all martial arts related sports, and it has helped me influence not only my work but my personal life as well, on how I self-motivate and face obstacles on a day-to-day. Quick agenda for today. First, we'll go through what is website usability and why is it important. Second topic will be website performance, and then we'll go into UX and UI design, and then we'll touch on mobile design and responsive design at the end, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the very end. If you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and put them in the questions chat box. And once I get to the end of the presentation, I'll try to get through as many as I can in the order that they're received. Great, guys. So what is website usability and why is it important? So the usability of a website tells us how effectively, efficiently, and satisfactory its visitors or users can see or examine by other means the website. Two main factors go into usability. A is navigation and user flow. So this is anything from your website sitemap, how it's organized, your navigation at the top, if you have navigation at the bottom or throughout your site. And secondary is your speed and performance of your site. So it's how fast your site loads and across all devices, so mobile, tablet, desktop. Why is it important? So at the top of the line, it's going to be conversions. So for everybody in the legal industry, you're looking to get conversions from your website. You're looking for people to come to your site, to pick up the phone and call you, or fill out a form for a callback, request a 30-minute consult, depending on what you're offering. So at the top of the line, I would say conversions is the main thing. Secondary, it's going to be SEO. As we go down in the presentation, you'll see how a good user-friendly website is going to affect how you get indexed. So you could have a beautiful website online, and if it's not getting indexed and you're not getting found on Google, you're not going to really get any traffics. So third thing is going to be mobile first indexing, which I touched on in the SEO webinar, but this is going to be a fairly big part of the presentation where I'll focus on how effective is your mobile site, because Google has shifted how it looks and grades your website, whether it be usability or indexing. It's actually looking at your mobile site first, and then it's looking at your desktop site or tablets and so on. And the last thing is going to be bounce rate and drop-offs. So poor site speed can affect your bounce rate and drop-offs, and bad UI. So user interface, depending on how you have designed it and how your user flow is throughout the site, that could affect people trying to find information that they're looking for. You could be getting a lot of drop-offs, or you could have a high bounce rate, which in return is also going to affect how you get indexed. So let's talk a little bit about performance. What is performance? So performance is one of the key factors used to determine website usability. And there's three kind of different sections for when it comes to performance. First is your site speed and load time. So how long does it take for each of your pages in your site to load? Your backend coding and JavaScript can attribute to your speed and load time. So how you're pulling data from your server and delivering it to your users um, could be one of the reasons why your load time is slow. What kind of JavaScript you're using, how many JavaScripts you're using on your site. So if you have a site that you're using a lot of special functionality on it, you just have to be conscious of what that's doing in return to your speed and load time. And lastly, it's going to be your hosting provider. So your hosting provider actually has a lot to do with how your site loads. You could have a really well functioning site. Everything could be optimized on your site, but if your hosting provider is not delivering the content quick enough to the user, it's going to affect your load time. You guys can see on the left hand side, there's a screenshot of a Google performance test. This Google performance test is at a high level. It'll show you some of the top things that you could fix when it comes to your site, when it comes to your load time and your speed of the different pages within your site. Now, one thing to note is that Google has put out this tool for free for everybody to use. And the reason why is they want everybody to start creating their website based on best practices so it's performing well. Um, well, let's dive quickly into some of the hosting details I talked about. So, few things to look out for when you're picking your hosting provider. As I mentioned before, cheaper doesn't always mean better, but look at the details and see what you're getting from your hosting providers. So 3 things I would say you should look for. First thing is global CDN, so faster load time for customers around the world. So make sure your hosting provider offers that for your site. And the 2 other things will be page performance plus and application performance plus. So these 2 things are mainly on the server side, and it relates to how fast the server delivers the content to the users. Anytime someone visits your website, the server has to react and load that information for them. So that's going to affect how fast your website is going to load for each individual person. Um, we talked about backend coding in JavaScript. So I have 2 examples here. I know this is a lot of technical info, but I want you guys to look at the left screenshot and the right screenshot. The left screenshot is from a WordPress site, also a hand-coded HTML site. Could also look like this. And the right-hand side is from a Wix site. So if you look at these 2, now, anytime you see color coding, these are different functions that search engines pull from your site. So if we look at the left-hand side, we have a head tag and we have your meta description, your meta title right off the bat. So when the Google bot comes onto your website and they're scanning your site, right away they know what your site's about by reading your title tag. They know what your site's about by reading your description. They can read your functionality and go a little bit further down and start reading some of your content right away. Now, if we look at the first half of a Wix site, what do we see? It's a huge amount of scripts that the bots have to crawl through to find your information. And this does 2 things. First thing is affects your load time and your speed time because of all this information they have to deliver. So any platforms that are drag and drop like Wix, Squarespace, you're going to have the same issues when it comes to the backend coding. And secondary, when I talked about how you get indexed, is they're going to grade you on this. So if your site has to load all these scripts and it's 1,000 lines of scripts that they have to load compared to the left side where I'm leaving only necessary scripts in there, it's going to make a huge difference on who gets priority over ranking. So some things to look out for when you're looking at the back end of your site or what platform you pick for your new website. Looking at your on-page optimization, some of the things that to a minimum. So first part is make sure you don't upload any pictures that are over 80 dpi. The optimum DPI for web is about 76. Looking at the size of your image, now this goes back to your desktop computer screen. You're going to want to shrink that down, because the rest of the image that you have to load is not necessarily has to be there. So all you're doing is you're just making the page a little bit heavier to load, and that's going to affect how your entire site loads, or any of your pages. So just be conscious of any images that you're putting online. The next thing is going to be font styles. So looking at font styles, there's two ways to put font your load time for your server or your website, because you're using Google Server. And secondary, you're not carrying the font with you. Now, I want you guys to think of fonts as files or briefcases. So anytime you add a new font that you want your website to load, and you're not using Google Font or variable fonts, think of your website having to carry files and briefcases wherever they go. They're going to have to load this for every individual that comes onto your font, loading the font and so on. But if you're looking to put some fancy fonts on your website, make sure you're using Google Fonts or variable fonts at the least, so it doesn't affect your load time. An efficient website takes it a step further, enables guests to find the information or reason, and they see your site right off the bat, they should know who you are and what you do. So looking at your brand, your logo should be visible up there. Information about you and your business and what you do. And also what you want the user to do. So there's a couple different ways. If we look at this example below, you'll see a website design, and you'll see, there's call to action clear above the fold. So what does above the fold mean? Means that if a user lands on your site, they don't have to scroll to see any additional information. They can see the call to action. They can see that this person is a Toronto employment lawyer. They can see some of the main attributes, that they give personal attention, they fight to protect your legal rights, and 30-minute free full consultation. And you also have the same call to action right in the middle, and you have free consultation phone number right at the top. So it's very important that all these different aspects are visible right above the fold. If you design your website that has a very large header and pushes everything down, and you don't have a clear call to action, it's going to drop your conversion rates when it comes to usability. Another good example, looking at Near One Law Corporation, clear call to action above the fold. You can see the phone number, you can see the call to action, get your free consultation right in the middle. It's very clear, and it's color coded as well, so it stands out from the header. And you also have a search bar too. So the search bar helps, especially if you have a larger site. If someone comes onto your site and they hover over your menu and they can't find what they're looking for, you're giving them that option to be able to search on your site, to be able to find the information that they're looking for as quickly and as easily as possible. Now, looking at user attention span, it's about 3 seconds. So if someone lands on your site and in about 3 seconds they don't find what they're looking for, the chances of them leaving is very high. Now, few things can attribute to them leaving. One could be simply your website took 6 seconds to load. The attention span is about 3 seconds. So if it's taking 6, 7 seconds to load, chances are a lot of people are not going to stick around. Next thing is going to be, when they land on your site, what do you want them to do? What incentive are you giving them to contact you? Now, the incentive could be the consultation, it could be trust factors that you're providing to them above the fold. So all this information, all the important information on your website has to be above the fold. Another really good user experience function is the sticky nav bar. So the sticky nav bar allows the user to be able to scroll down the page, but keeping the main action items at the top following them. So that means your brand is always following, your menu is always following. So that way, if they wanted to change the page or go to your services, they don't have to scroll back up. So you're making it very easy. And obviously, you have your contact us and your search bar constantly following the person down the page. Now, the next thing is going to be the back to the top button. This is also a very useful feature. Depending on who's visiting your site, people might use your site differently. So you want to give them the two different options to be able to navigate throughout the site as easily as possible. The back to top button, let's say if the user has scrolled down, or you have a blog page that has a lot of content and they've scrolled down and they want to go back to the top quickly, that button is just going to get them there with one click. So limiting the amount of clicks and scrolls as much as possible throughout the site. Making it easy for users to find your service with one click. Now, a lot of times there is navigation structures that are designed. Let's say if I wanted to go to the practice area, I would have to click on this first to be able to see what the practices are. So it's actually loading a separate page. Now, anytime you add an additional click to the user's journey, just think of them as they could potentially drop off in that journey. So I want them to get to the information that they want in under 3 clicks. So the less, the better. If they can get there in 2 clicks, then that's great. So how we do that is making sure your website is using a drop-down function. If you have a lot of different services, make sure you're categorizing them to sub menus. So the user can hover over your services and they can see what you do and they can click on there. And with one click from the homepage, they can get to the information that they want with this feature. And that includes the sticky nav bar when they're scrolling down as well. Now let's looking at mobile usability. Making sure you keep your call to action front and center. There were some examples at the top that we looked at. Making sure you have clear call to action is very important. Now, learn more is not a preferred call to action when it comes to you wanting to generate leads, you wanting to create conversions. Learn more can be useful for something that's educational. So if you're using that within your blog somewhere, it could be useful, but don't use learn more when it comes to your homepage above the fold, especially on mobile. We can look at these two examples here, the one on the left and the one on the right. You could see that right above the fold, when I land there, I can see a lot of information. I can put in my zip code, get a quote, I can find an agent, I can log in, I can make a payment. I have all these options to me. Now, if I look at the one on the right-hand side, the only option that's available for me is learn more. And the next thing I have to do is scroll down. So I want to eliminate that. So let's say for a law firm, what I want to make sure I have there is a clear call to action. If I do a 30-minute consult, I want to make sure I have that there. And I want to make sure my phone number is right there above the fold when it comes to mobile. So when people are looking to call me, they can just tap on the phone number and they can call me without having to scroll or without having to click. Keeping menus short and sweet and making it easy to get back to the home page. So a couple other examples here. If you look at the menu structure on this particular website, if I was to click on the hamburger button, my menu's well structured. I could see about us, our work, employees, class actions, our people, and I have sub menus under that as well. So any of the options here that have an arrow beside it, there's an additional drop down, which is going to show me more detail. So I can get to where I want right from the home page. And if you look at the example on the right-hand side, you could see that as soon as I land on here, I can see my phone number, I can see the call to action, I can see exactly what this person does. And if there's anything else I can include within that, for example, here we give you personal attention. If that's one of your trust factors at the top of the line, you want to make sure you display that on the mobile side as well. The next thing is, don't let promotions steal the show. So if you're using a pop-up on your site for announcements and things like that, I would recommend using a banner um, rather than a pop-up, because a pop-up is gonna be okay for the people that want to receive that information, but you also have to think about your returning visitors, people that are coming onto your site, people that already know this information. And if you look on the right-hand side, if you're going to use a pop-up, you got to make sure it's clear that the person can close the pop-up. And what I would recommend is maybe use a pop-up just for the desktop version and not for the mobile version, just so it doesn't cover everything that we just talked about. So if we're talking about all the important information to being above the fold, and I put a pop-up right on top of everything, that's going to eliminate that whole engagement factor that we're trying to get for the people that are visiting your site. Um, so I would stay away from pop-ups as much as possible, and I will use different banners maybe at the top if I can fit them in, or maybe only use it on the desktop version and not on the mobile version. User flow. Now, making sure you have analytics set up, very important. Even if you're not doing any type of marketing, just understanding user behavior, and you're making decisions based on the data that you get. Understanding where are the most number of drop-offs that are happening throughout my site. And I can also study this based on regions. So for example, in this case, if you guys can see the second option on the second column, and the second option which says 5-tips. So this is actually a page about disputing tickets, traffic tickets. And if I look at the traffic here, I can see that there's a lot more traffic coming from Vancouver to that page than it is from Surrey. So this could mean two things. It could mean that I'm getting a lot of traffic from Vancouver, I'm getting indexed well there. Or B, it could also mean that the demand is different from Vancouver to Surrey. And looking at that page and how I want to optimize it, or how I want to change the content on it and make sure the user information is there. So for example, if this is a blog page that they're landing on, now I can go back and make sure I have some of these features that we talked about. I got to make sure I have a call to action there, because I'm getting a lot of traffic to that page. So why not use that traffic to my advantage and put some information there, make sure people can call me, even if it is on my blog. So this is how you can actually go back, visit your data, and make decisions based on what you're going to do next from a usability perspective. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get more conversions through your site. And how you get more conversions is by studying your data, studying your user behavior, see what they're doing, and making decisions based on that. Responsive design. Making sure your site works on all devices. Now, 10 years ago, sites used to be designed in a completely different format, where you had to create a version for desktop, create a version for tablet, create a version for mobile. And now that we have over 100 different types of mobile devices, you're going to have to create a version for each one of those. Now, responsive design, what's great about responsive design is that it adjusts based on the size of the screen. So you no longer have to worry about designing something for tablet or for mobile. What I always say is, if you make sure you hit all these rules that we talked about for usability on your desktop, when it comes down to tablet and mobile, you're already going to be there. because if you're keeping your call to action front and center, the most important information above the fold, when that information gets shrunken down to the different devices, you're gonna be right in that sweet spot. And it's important that you use the most recent technology to do your responsive design. So that way you're not facing any issues if another mobile device comes out in a year or so that's a completely different size. And you also had to take into consideration that even with mobile and tablet, you could flip your device, and that's going to give you a completely different perspective. So responsive design adjusts everything according to the device and the user. So very important that you keep that in mind for your website, because it's going to make a huge difference when it comes to usability. Development and SEO. We talked about getting indexed if you have bad usability. We talked about your load time and how that could affect your indexing as well. Making sure that you have no errors on your site. Make sure you have no, for example, there's some technical errors we can see in this screenshot. There's redirect chain loops, and it's actually telling me there's 3 pages that have low speed. So I can look at those pages, and some of those pages could be due to the fact that I've put an image there that's over the DPI that I need for web, or it's very large and it doesn't need to be that large for the page. And redirecting the user 2 or 3 times. Now I'll give you guys an example. If you look at a website that has www in front of it, and you could also have the same version website without the www. Now that's one version of a redirect when someone comes onto your site and they're getting redirected to the right version. Now, in some cases, what the hosting provider does is they accidentally repeat that process 2 or 3 times. Now, you may not see it because your site can be cached onto your computer. So when you're loading it, it's actually loading faster for you. But to the regular users that are coming on your site, it's going to be slower. And secondary, Google's going to pick this information up. Now, they might necessarily not say that this is affecting your load speed, but if they see it as an error, they're going to dock you points based on, hey, this site has errors. I don't really want to send traffic here because I want the user to get the best experience possible. So if you always keep that at the top of your mind, how can I deliver the best experience possible when people are coming onto my site? You're going to hit all these marks. And again, looking at your crawlability, HTTPS, your site performance, and so on is going to be very important. Your SSL certificate is going to be huge, because now every site that collects any type of information needs an SSL. And that collecting information can just be a simple contact us form. First name, last name, email. And you're going to get priority over sites that don't have SSL certificates. So making sure you have your SSL installed on all your sites, it's very important. Looking at different errors in the back end, we talked about redirect errors. Here we can see server errors. So if server errors pop up, this is something that you want to monitor. And this is something that your hosting provider should do for you, or it could be the person in charge of taking care of your website. Now, again, there's people out there that do this as a profession. They make sure that your website is on point. They monitor your website on a monthly basis to make sure you don't have any errors and so on. And that's what you want to do. A lot of times if you start dabbling into some of these technical details yourself, it might seem too much. And when it comes to understanding errors, back-end coding, and things like that, there's a big learning curve around that. So understanding what to do and how to resolve these issues is going to be important. Website health, performance, daily audits, ensure all your errors are fixed. Once you fix your errors, we talked a little bit about this in the SEO webinar. but making sure that once you fix your errors, if it is showing up on your Search Console, which is a tool provided by Google, you do rectify it with Google, letting Google know that you have fixed this error and they can rescan your site again. And again, 404s are another great way for you to improve your user experience. You know, as time goes by, you remove pages and you add pages, you change page URLs throughout the history of your site. Now, if you're not conscious of redirecting those old URLs to new pages, what you're going to end up with is a lot of old 404 pages. And there has been users that have been visiting your site. Maybe that page has gotten indexed in Google and it's no longer there, or maybe it's been bookmarked. And or even it could have been a link that was built back to that page from another source or blog. So you want to make sure that you're setting up proper redirects and looking at these reports, because if you're getting a lot of 404 errors to a certain page, maybe that page was useful. A, that's the first thing I would look at. And B, the second thing I would look at is where can I redirect this traffic now? So that when people come onto my site, they don't see a broken page. So a few things to keep in mind when you're updating your site, when you're removing pages or adding new information to the site. Monthly audits on your site speed is important. Again, you know, the other discussion is I start off tomorrow with a 5-page website, but every month I throw on an extra page. You know, I'm writing blogs, I'm writing more service pages, I'm including more team members on my website. Now, what is that doing to my site speed? You know, I got to look to see how much bandwidth my hosting provider has for me. Am I reaching the top of that bandwidth? And this is all monitoring on a monthly basis. And, you know, Google provides you with the tools that you need to be able to go in and see what's happening with your pages, how many of them are slower than before. And it could be due to, again, adding a lot of resources onto your site. It could be, you know, I started with a static site and now I have a chat function on my site and I have 3 other sliders rotating through on the homepage. All that stuff's going to affect my load speed. So making sure that you revisit this at least once a month, if not every quarter, to make sure that, you know, your site speed and your load time is still on point as your website overall. And if there's any individual pages that you need to target to optimize to make them faster, make sure you're doing that. Is your website mobile friendly? We talked about responsive design. If you're using responsive design, chances are you're automatically hitting this mark. So Google's going to tell you that your website's mobile friendly. In some cases, if you're using responsive design, but let's say your menu is not visible when it comes to mobile or tablet, or certain things get shifted out of place, then you also still want to look at your mobile site to make sure that Google thinks of your site as mobile friendly. Because looking at mobile friendliness of the site is going to be very important, not only for yourself, but for Google as well, because that's how they're going to grade you when it comes to indexing. So making sure all that stuff is on point, it's going to be very important. And that's about it, guys. I'm going to move into some Q&A, see if you guys have any questions here. I have a question from Mike. What are you using to get SEO analytics? So Mike, there's a lot of different tools to get SEO analytics. There's the first one at the top of the list, which is Google Analytics, which will give you the analytics of what's happening on your site. There's also Search Console, which was some of the graphs that I was showing on the site, and that gives you your site health, but it also gives you information on impressions, and what's happening before people land on your site. Now, if you're looking for a tool that'll give you specifically what you're doing wrong, or what you're missing when it comes to SEO, there's a lot of tools out there that are going to give you that information. Internally, Soulpepper, we have our own tool that we use. Um, that we use to scan websites, and this is based on some of the algorithms that we're looking at internally. I hope that answers your question. How often, so question from Maria, how often should a website be updated or redesigned? So the redesign of your site, I would say every 3 to 5 years. Now, it all depends how you built your site initially. One thing to note is that technology is always changing, and that goes for back end of your site, what kind of scripts and JavaScripts and CSS and all these functions that newer sites are using, that are making sites faster, they're making them more user friendly, and so on. So if I created my site 5 years ago, if I created my site 2 years ago from now, I would want to redesign today, just because in the last year and a half, technology has changed a lot. So generally speaking, I would say about 3 years, you want to change your site. You want to give it a fresh look. And if you even like the design, you want to look at the back end. Sometimes you got to change the engine. Even it goes back to the technology talk that we just had. So make sure your engine is up to par, and you could keep the same design as you had before if that's what's working for you. What is the best SEO friendly platform? Well, there's there's a lot. There's a lot of them out there. Um, there is hand coded websites that are super SEO friendly, but it all depends on what you need as a business owner. So I give an example. At the top of the line for all our lawyers, we recommend WordPress. And the reason for that is it's got a really good user-friendly backend CMS system where you can go in and update your content at a later date. So if you wanted to go in and change text, add images and things like that, WordPress gives you that backend functionality where you could do that without having to go to school to understand, what all these coding and development languages are. But other than that, there's hand-coded website. There's some other platforms out there as well that'll give you user-friendly websites, but they may not have the friendly CMS system in the backend that you're looking for. If you have a web developer that you're working with constantly and you plan to keep that person for the lifespan of the website, then you could go with something like a hand-coded website. But other than that, as a business owner, I would always recommend WordPress. Do I need to hire a developer to update the content? It depends on what your site is built in. If your site is built in WordPress, and there's two different types of WordPress. There's a bootstrap design that's going to be a little bit more difficult to update the content. But if you get a general WordPress site that has the CMS system attached to the backend, you're going to be able to update it by yourself without knowledge of coding. So they make it fairly easy for you to be able to do that. So you don't necessarily need to hire a developer, but it depends on how much time you have on your hand. There's a little bit of studying that you need to do to understand kind of the dashboard of the backend, but it's fairly easy to pick up. I'm just looking through the chat to see if there's any other questions that I've missed. All right, it doesn't seem like there's any other questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about um, one of the memberships that we're working on here at Soulpepper, just for the legal industry. This will give you, if you're looking to get a new website, this will give you a new website. It'll give you marketing and resource library. So if you want to know things about strategy, how to run some of your best practices for SEO, or maybe you need help with organic social, all this information is included in the legal membership. And you also get access to some industry tools. You know, if you want to track how your website is performing from ranking perspective, if you want to get some reporting back from your Google business and some of the other sources online, this is a great tool, great package that we've put together just for the legal industry. So there'll be an email which we'll send out after the webinar that'll have a free consultation booking in there. So if you're looking for a free consult and you need me to look at your site, make sure you register for that, and we'll do a one-on-one consult. We'll sit down and we'll go through your site together. And I can also show you details of the membership site as well. I got some other questions here too. Are videos good or bad for websites? Videos are a great tool for a website. Now, it all depends on how you load your videos on your site. I would recommend using something like YouTube or Vimeo. I would lean towards YouTube because it gets a lot more traffic than Vimeo. But now, saying that, anytime you embed a video onto your site, it's gonna cause some load time. You know, it's gonna take some resources. So it really depends on where your site is at for load time. So if my site is at 3 seconds, you know, I'm at the very border, and I add a video on there and it pushes me over, maybe I wouldn't want to do that to the homepage. Maybe I would want to do that to one of the internal pages, or maybe I even create a way for people to get to that video from the homepage without having to load it. You know, it's all about balance. You know, I want to have a really good looking website, but I also want it to load fast. So looking at maybe some of your other functions on your site, seeing if there's a way that you can take some things out to allow room for the video to go in. And this is all info that your web developer will provide for you. Mike, yeah, the cost for the membership, it varies. So it'll really help if I understand where you're at and what you're looking for, and then we can provide you with some options. So once the email goes out, make sure to register, and me and you will sit down and we'll have a chat about the membership, and we'll go through kind of what you need on that front. All right, awesome, guys. I think we're almost out of time here, so I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar. Make sure to keep an eye out for other upcoming webinars. We're going to be continuing with these series going forward. So look out for the next one, and make sure you register. And if you have any questions, we're here to help. Also, take care, guys.